فأزلهما الشيطان عنها فأخرجهما مما كانا فيه وقلنا اهبطوا بعضكم لبعض عدو ولكم في الأرض مستقر ومتاع إلى حين
পরে তারা যে সুখ স্বাচ্ছন্দ্যে ছিল তা থেকে তাদেরকে বের করে দিল এবং আমি বললাম তোমরা নেমে যাও, তোমরা পরস্পর একে অপরের শত্রু হবে এবং তোমাদেরকে সেখানে কিছুকাল অবস্থান করতে হবে ও লাভ সংগ্রহ করতে হবে।
فأزلهما الشيطان عنها فأخرجهما مما كانا فيه وقلنا اهبطوا بعضكم لبعض عدو ولكم في الأرض مستقر ومتاع إلى حين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. We begin with the ayah فَأَزَلَّهُمَا الشَّيْطَانُ عَنْهَا. Then shaitan caused both of them to slip. The ha here referring to the instruction of Allah Azza wa Jal, the guidance also of Allah Azza wa Jal. Some have even said the ha here, the pronoun, meaning shaitan caused them to slip from it, refers to the instruction regards to the tree because the tree is feminine. Anyhow, فَتَكُونَ مِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ فَأَخْرَجَهُمَا, then he expelled both of them, meaning Allah Azza wa Jal expelled both of them. Some ulama have even commented that shaitan caused both of them to be expelled. But the majority opinion is that it's akhraja can refer to Allah Azza wa Jal. The only reason the other opinion even exists is because there's proximity. There's azalla, he caused them to slip, and in the same ayah akhraja, he got them expelled. So you could put that on Iblis as well. فَأَخْرَجَهُمَا مِمَّا كَانَ فِيهِ, in what they used to be in. وَقُلْنَا اهْبِطُوا بَعْضُكُمْ لِبَعْضٍ عَدُوٌّ. Now, this is one of the things you should appreciate about Qur'an. Allah is very brief in some places, and then He takes that very brief statement and explains it in great detail in some other place. Which is why it's impossible for somebody to study only one part of Qur'an and not take the rest of Qur'an. So Allah Azza wa Jal here, very brief language, He says He caused both of them to slip, and they both got expelled. He caused both of them to be expelled. In Surah Al-A'raf, we'll get long, explicit detail, how did He cause them to slip? How did they slip? Here Allah is brief in this matter. So in each surah you will find sometimes Allah explains something more and something less. And in the other place, the other parts are brief and some other parts are more detailed. But the question is, why is there more detail about some aspects here, and why is there more brief discussion over there? Every surah has a central message and a central set of lessons, and the parts of the story that have to do with that surah are given more detail. And the parts that have less to do with that surah are mentioned in brief. So in Surah Al-A'raf we'll find more details about how they slipped. But here it's very brief mention. فَأَزَلَّهُمَا الشَّيْطَانُ عَنْهَا فَأَخْرَجَهُمَا مِمَّا كَانَ فِيهِ. I'll repeat something I said yesterday. Here Allah Azza wa Jal makes sure we understand the waswasa of shaitan. The victim of it was both of our parents. It wasn't just Eve, it wasn't Hawa, salamun alayha. It was both of them, huma. Unlike the Christian belief that it's Eve, that is the root of all evil. Right? And then they blame her for the mishappenings in paradise. Anyhow, now when they did eat from the tree, and it caused them to be expelled from paradise, the words of Allah are ihbitu. وَقُلْ نَهْبِطُوا. We said descend. But when you say in Arabic, when you tell two people to descend, you say ihbita. You say at the end. But the ayah says ihbitu. It's plural. And from this we derive that even Iblis is being addressed. Who was sent to earth, among those who were sent to earth is our father, our mother, alayhim as-salam, and also Iblis la'anahullah. And then we find بَعْضُكُمْ لِبَعْضٍ عَدُوٌّ. Some of you, or one group will be enemy to the other group. That's how ba'd is implied here. One group will be enemy to the other. So there are three kinds of animosity now. There's men that will have animosity towards women, women animosity towards men, and Iblis animosity towards men, and Iblis animosity towards women. There's three kinds of animosity going on. And the main animosity will be between man and woman that is fueled by Iblis himself. And this, in more modern terms, we call this the social problem. The balance in society between the role of men and the role of women is studied in sociology, right? And to this day, we haven't found a balance between these two things. On the one hand, you have male chauvinism, and on the other hand, you have extreme radical feminism. You've got these extremes. One side says men deserve everything, women deserve nothing. The other comes to the opposite extreme and says women deserve everything, men deserve nothing. And then people try to come up with their compromises, but in the end, so long as human beings are going to try to make a compromise, it will only be unfair. And the only one who can balance the two sides is Allah Azza wa Jalla and His guidance. So you have بَعْضُكُمْ لِبَعْضٍ عَدُوٌّ وَلَكُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ مُسْتَقَرٌّ. And in the earth there will be a temporary place of rest for you. There's muqam and mustaqar. Mustaqar is a place you take tranquility in and you find stop in and you find coolness in for a limited period of time. So Allah says the station of the earth is going to be temporary. وَمَتَاعٌ إِلَى حِينٍ. And utilities until a given time. The very powerful word Allah used for dunya here, mata'. Mata' in Arabic means a tool, like a shovel, or like a brush, or a scrape, or a sponge in a kitchen. Things you use. But mata' by definition is something you use, but you don't enjoy. It's not something meant to be enjoyed, it's something meant to be used. I don't think anybody enjoys a shovel, unless they're really into digging or something. It's not a normal thing to enjoy. Nobody enjoys, things like a screwdriver or things like that, tools. Al-Asma'i rahimahullah wanted to do research on this one word, mata', because it's used so many times in Qur'an. And the way he used to do research, he used to go to the Arab Bedouin deserts to try to find people that are using that word without asking them. So he wanted to see the word being used in its natural context. So he travels village to village and he can't find anybody using the word mata', but he doesn't want to ask. Because if he asks, according to him, he'll get an artificial definition. But if he just hears it being used naturally, he'll get the genuine definition, right? So he's waiting for him to hear this word. I mean, imagine the kind of pain that takes to find a word being used, just run into it. So he's exhausted, he sits at the bank of this pond, and this little girl is scrubbing, her dishes. She's scrubbing it, and her pet goat comes and it grabs the brush and runs away with the brush. So the girl starts crying and says, أَخَذَ مَتَاعِي. That the goat took my brush away. And she called the brush, the tool, a mata'. And he put that in his notes, on his commentary on the word mata'. It's something you use, but it's not something to enjoy. And Allah says, in this earth, you're going to be here for a little while you'll have a lot of things to use. But don't get caught up in them. They're supposed to be things that are in your hand, not in your heart. And this is something very important. For a lot of people, they have no dunya in their hand, but the entire dunya is inside their heart. So even if they have no materials, they're still materialistic. And on the other hand, you can have a person who has all the wealth in the world, but the wealth is in their hand. And it hasn't entered into their heart. If they have it one day and they don't have it the next day, their heart doesn't change. They understand it belonged to Allah like I myself belong to Allah. So Allah says about this dunya, when He sends us here, He says, وَلَكُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ مُسْتَقَرٌّ وَمَتَاعٌ إِلَى حِينٍ. Until a given time, there will be things for you to utilize.